Hi, my name is Jennifer Howard. I am the founder and owner of Facets Relational Care, and I am back after somewhat of a fairly long sabbatical, I would say, to finish a series on the levels of health for each of the different Enneagram numbers. And currently I was working on Enneagram Type 6, which is the only number probably in this series that's going to have 3 separate videos. A video covering really unhealthy, average, and then today's topic, which is going to be what a healthy Enneagram Type 6 looks like. I say that because Enneagram Type 6 is my number, so I understand it better and differently than I do the other numbers. I think I said in a previous video, for me and for anybody, every other number that's not your number is just theory to you. You understand it from how you experience it when you interact with other people and observe other people, but sometimes being that number can be described very differently than how, somebody who just observes you would describe. So I tend to have a little bit more insight into 6 than I do the other numbers. So today we're going to pick up where we left off, and I'm going to cover what does it look like to be a healthy Enneagram 6. As I have stated at the beginning of all of the videos in this series, it's important for me to give credit where credit is due. I did not come up with the theory for levels of health for the Enneagram numbers. That actually is attributed to 2 authors named Don Rizzo and Russ Hudson. They are 2 of my most favorite Enneagram authors ever in the entire world. If you are ever looking for really solid information on the Enneagram that, in my opinion, is very unbiased, well-written, well-observed, I would recommend anything. They have a ton of books, anything by Don Rizzo and Russ Hudson. They have got a website, enneagraminstitute.com, that has, there's not a whole lot of information. Their books are really going to be the thing to purchase, I think, but the website gives you a lot of really good introductory information if you are new to Enneagram, or if you just want to show it to somebody else and kind of try to rope them into something that's really cool. So getting straight on to the topic of what does a healthy Enneagram Type 6 look like. If you saw the video prior to this one where I was discussing Enneagram 6 on average levels of health, which is level 4, 5, and 6. On level 4, which was the last level that I covered, I talked about how a 6 at this level is someone who still very loyal, very committed, but they're giving themselves to organizations or ideas or thought processes or people or patterns of behavior that they don't necessarily believe in or don't necessarily agree with, but it's kind of like that's where the safety seems to be, that's where the majority seems to be. And when you're a 6, whether you consciously realize it or not, your tendency is to believe that there's safety in numbers. And what I mean by that is 6s have a hard time going against the grain because the fear is that people are going to become angry at you for going against the established norm and for expressing yourself, if what you want to express is different than the established norm. And the fear is that out of that anger, they will retaliate against you. They will do something to cause harm to you. They'll do something to violate your safety. Safety is a huge issue for Enneagram Type 6. And I'm talking about practical safety and physical safety, such as having a job and, not being shot or something. But I'm also talking about emotional safety as well. Not being hurt, not being rejected, not being made to feel like something is wrong with you because you see something different than how the majority sees it, right? That is a core struggle for someone that's an Enneagram Type 6, always. And so when I was talking about level 4 the last time, I was talking about how that type of 6 is someone that is in touch with the self enough to know what they believe in, what they don't believe in, what their preferences are, what their preferences are not, but they're still really kind of grappling with that fear of how do I take this truth that I have inside of myself and put that out into the world and carve a space for who I believe that I really am. Because again, the fear is if that person, whoever that person is different than what they're supposed to be, it's just this agonizing fear, a constant wrestling of if I put this out there and something bad happens to me, I'm not safe. And that's a big trigger for 6. So when a 6 on the Enneagram begins to evolve and they go up into what we call the healthier levels, all right, the next level up is 3. And if you've watched any of my previous videos, I have been going from the bottom up. I don't know, I like happy endings, I guess. Anyways, so when we're talking about a level 3 6, I want to take a direct quote from Don Rizzo and Russ Hudson to discuss this because I absolutely loved what they said. So they describe a level 3 Enneagram 6 as someone who is dedicated to individuals and movements in which they deeply believe. And I think that the distinct part of that sentence that really stuck out to me was the phrase, in which they deeply believe. And this is where you start to see the transition in 6 from average to healthy. This is a 6 who has decided that they are going to take the things that they do believe in, the things that they would really rather support. They're taking their truth and they're starting to externalize it and make a place for the differentiated self in the world, which they have every right to do. Every person does. And so at this point, 6s aren't necessarily going at life on their own, but this may be a 6 that says, I don't agree with what the company, I don't agree, this company that I'm working for right now, I don't agree with what they're doing. I don't agree with how they do it, their mission, the industry itself, whatever that could be. So I'm going to leave here and I'm going to go into another industry or work for another company that I feel like I can support. I'm going to go someplace that aligns more with myself. So again, they're not necessarily blatantly saying, hey, this is me and this is what I think and I disagree with you. They're just altering their lifestyle so that they continue to conform and support and play the role of a loyalist. But they're doing it now with places and ideas and people and groups that they feel like they can support, things that line up more with what their own internal sense of value is, if that makes sense. So that's like a level 3 type 6. I had some notes, some things to add to it, and I'm deciding if I want to now. So when we go to a level 2, I'm going to go ahead and move on to a level 2 6. 6s at this point, I think Don Rizzo and Russ Hudson also imply this as well. This is where 6s start to really get confidence in their sense of self, in who they are as differentiated individuals from their, I don't know, maybe their family unit or their significant other or the people that they work with or the organization that they're involved in or their political party or the religion that they believe in, you name it. Again, we don't necessarily have someone that's blatantly going against the grain because that's not entirely a very six-ish thing to do. But you have someone that now is starting to feel comfortable enough with self. And it may not even really be about feeling comfortable with self. It may be that these 6s have gotten to a place where they realize that some things are worth fighting for and some things are worth the fear and worth the anxiety. And I think that 6s at level 2 realize that they are worth what they're going to have to face to kind of carve their place in the world, to say their piece and to be who they genuinely are and share their truth, regardless of whether or not other people can understand it or accept it. I want to say this. I think this is a really key thing to know about people who are 6s on the Enneagram. Typically speaking, when we read Enneagram type 6 profiles, these people are depicted a lot like 1, I think, at least in the respect that they are described as being kind of the backbone to society. In other words, sixes are the people that kind of keep their head down and just do their job. They don't ask questions. They're very compliant. They love knowing what the larger system is so that they can enmesh into that and support it. You know, the sixes and ones, I think, out of any numbers on the Enneagram, those are the top two that we could contribute to just a basic, lawful, peaceful, regulated, functioning society. We have that because of the ones and the sixes in the world. But I also want to say this. As a six and getting to know other sixes on more intimate levels, I have found that most sixes are, genuinely speaking, very much against the grain people. There are very few sixes that believe or agree with the supportive behaviors and the things that they're supporting. You know, a lot of them will say, I know that I would be honest and say that I will do things because I fear what will happen to me if I don't do them. But it's not necessarily a good representation of what I believe and what I think and who I am, how I would define myself as a person. And so when you get a six that's at a level 2 degree of health, I think this is the place where they start to realize that whatever it is that I have to go up against, it's worth the effort that it takes to carve my place out in the world, to be able to say, hey, I don't agree with this. I don't want to support this. I think something differently than you, you know? That's a really scary thing. So when we're at level 2, that's what starts to happen. And I will also say this, sixes tend to see the world very differently than most other people. And part of the reason why I think that is because when you silence yourself for so long and you conform and commit and enmesh yourself in groups and jobs and schools of thought and what have you that don't necessarily align with who you are, I think that you start to see the underbelly of a lot of these things. You know, I have had jobs and I got into the job and I realized there were some very unethical business practices that, or I should say, things that would be considered unethical to me, things that did not align with what I believed was right, okay, things that I wasn't comfortable participating in, and things that I did because I was scared of what would happen to me if I didn't do them. And it's interesting because it's like when I'm in those situations, you keep your head down and you're quiet and you do what you're told. And those are the people that are paying attention. Those are the people that are taking in all kinds of information that you don't know they're taking in. And so when you're a 6, I think you see the dark side of things, and I think you see the underbelly, and I think that you see the dysfunction and all of the things that everyone tries to sweep under the rug. I think you see that. I know I do. And again, part of that is also because I'm an INFJ and I'm looking for it. But to some degree, 6 is just, they find it in their own way. They find it. It's amazing to me how if I can take a 6 and separate them from their environment, all of the stuff they'll start to tell me, and they'll say, oh, don't believe anything that person just said, they're a liar, let me tell you how it really is, and blah 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 blah, you know. But then when they're with that person again, they act like, you know, everything's fine and, you know, whatever. So I think that 6s become confident in speaking out against what they see that's an injustice, if that makes sense. 6s really are a lot like 8 in the respect that they have got this desire to defend the underdog, if you will. And 6s a lot of times are the underdog, and not because they're necessarily, you know, persecuted or rejected or anything like that. 6s are almost always usually, you know, fan favorites because they're so compliant and they're nice and they'll do whatever you want them to do and they'll agree with you and all of this other stuff. But I think that 6s often feel very resentful because they feel like they've had to be that person to survive. And I think they kind of transfer that resentment onto other people, and they become resentful of the people that they've conformed to because they've had to conform. You know what I mean? So they develop and kind of grow out of that fear, hopefully. And it's amazing to me how all of a sudden you start to see this really courageous, outspoken person who isn't necessarily trying to rock the boat, but at the same time, they're not putting up with bullshit anymore. You understand what I'm saying? This is someone who's gotten to the place where they can draw their line in the sand. Terrifying. This is a point where I have noticed 6s will almost start to develop a following. This is where I think 6s start to step into leadership roles in one way or another. And sometimes it's intentional. Most of the time it's unintentional. People, I think, at this point see the 6 and think, this is a very brave person, this is a trustworthy person, this is an authentic person, this is someone that's not lying to me, this is someone that's going to accept me the way that I am. You know, if you're a 6, I don't know if you've ever considered this, but you would be surprised probably how many people, even if they are another number on the Enneagram, really identify with you, and that feeling of having to hide who they really are in order to be safe in a world that they perceive to be as dangerous and unaccepting. You know, that's a pretty common thing. You know, again, I don't care what Enneagram number you are. I think a lot of people at some point or another have struggled with that. And I think if there's anyone in the world that could address that issue and serve as a role model for how to handle that peacefully, it's going to be a 6, a healthier 6, you know, level 2, level 1, that kind of thing. Yeah. Level 1, Enneagram 6 at their best. My dream. A level 1 Enneagram 6. Oh, how do I want to even say it? This is someone I think that has discovered who they are and made peace with who they are. And I say make peace because you cannot securely express yourself to the world unless you're okay with who you are. The people that feel like they have to alter themselves a bit when, you know, they're with different types of groups or whatever, these are very insecure people. That's a sign. That doesn't mean that other people don't accept you the way they are, the way that you are. That's a sign that you don't accept yourself the way that you are. That's always a red flag to me that somebody's a really insecure person. 6s tend to be often extremely insecure. You know I am one. I struggle with that on a daily basis. So when we're talking about a level 1 6, this is a 6 that, again, they've discovered who they are. They have made peace with who they are. They like who they are, and the parts that they don't necessarily like, again, they've made peace with it. And they're at that place where they can say, you know, this is me, and I'm not perfect, but this is the way that I want to live my life. This is the lifestyle that I like and that I believe is best for me. This is what I believe. This is the political stance that I have. These are the people that I want to hang out with. This is what I am and am not willing to do on the job, etc., so forth and so on. And they're able to put that out into the world in a very gentle, non-confrontational, peaceful way. You know, they're able to do that without forcing someone else to silence who they are. You know, it's kind of like this type of 6 just kind of knows how to kind of squeeze in and make their own space in the world without pushing anyone else's space out, if that makes sense. So, really strong characteristic to have, very difficult to have. This is also, I think, what adds to 6's natural leadership ability, which is there. You just don't know it because so few 6s, I think a lot of 6s have no idea that they possess like a ton of leadership skills. They do, but they don't know it. And they're very inspiring, very insightful. They see things that other Enneagram numbers tend to miss. So a lot of 6s don't know that about themselves, but when we get to a level 1, this is a 6 that can lead peacefully. They're not necessarily looking for followers, but it's kind of like, you know, if you want their advice and you want their help, if they can, they'll give it to you. You know, they wish you the best, but they don't necessarily feel like they have to comply to help you, because maybe they just don't want to, or maybe they can't, or you know what I mean? They're able to stay differentiated from you, but they can still be really inspiring, I think. And I don't know if any of that makes sense. I will also say another thing to keep in mind for a 6 that has reached the highest degree of health, which is level 1, is I think that these 6s are the 6s that have finally got their trust issues figured out, and these are the 6s that have an accurate perspective of what constitutes healthy versus unhealthy trust. I have heard a lot of different Enneagram speakers talk on this topic, and I have heard a lot of different Enneagram speakers talk about what does healthy trust look like for someone that's a 6 on the Enneagram. I heard one particular Enneagram speaker say something that I considered to be very alarming, and that is, she said that 6s will not learn how to trust themselves until they first learn how to trust other people. I am going to counter that, like a lot. And I'm going to counter that because, as any 8 will attest, the world is full of fucked up people who are selfish and they don't care anything about themselves. If you go out into the world with this understanding that I'm going to learn how to trust other people, which will teach me how to trust myself, then by that logic, you're never going to trust yourself because you're going to get eaten alive. And I don't mean to be offensive when I say this, but in terms of Enneagram numbers, if we're talking about any number that's going to go out into the world and get eaten alive, you understand 6s are probably the first people that get tossed into the meat grinder because 9 times out of 10, we don't have any sort of backbone, right? And again, I'm not being mean. I mean, that's just how it is, okay? That's the behavioral pattern that tends to follow with being a type 6. So I disagree with that. I also disagree with that because when you place your ability to be healthy in the hands of other people, which is what that suggestion would indicate, what you're doing is you're developing what's called an external locus of control. And an external locus of control simply means that you have no control over what happens to you, over your own self-development, over your own feelings. It's kind of this internal belief that my quality of life is determined by what other people do and what they think and the circumstances that happen to me. I have no control. Everything outside of me has control. That's what made you an unhealthy 6 in the first place. Do not ever think that learning how to have relationships where you trust other people is where that comes from. I strongly disagree. However, I'm also going to say this. I don't believe that you should also think that if I learn how to trust myself, then I can learn how to trust other people. And here's why I think that. You, as a 6, myself, I'm a 6, we're humans too. And we're stupid and we're going to fuck up because we don't know what we're doing with our own lives. I know I don't. And on top of that, we're also very selfish people because we're humans and humans are selfish, right? Our instinctual drive is to care for ourselves first, right? At the expense of other people. It's normal. Not a good thing, not a bad thing. It's just how it is. So if you have this idea that you can trust you, you're going to let yourself down. You're not going to trust anybody. I don't trust myself half the damn time, okay? And that's not a statement that's putting me down. It's just a factual statement. I recommend 2 things. This depends on what stance you want to take. From a faith-based perspective, I believe in God. And so the way that I have found helps me develop myself as a 6 is I've realized that I don't have to trust myself and I don't have to trust other people because I have a higher power. And so for me, my thinking is if I have this higher power and if I trust this higher power and this higher power is someone that's perfect and loving and all-knowing and ever-present, someone that wouldn't harm me or another person, I trust that higher power, which for me is God, to I don't like the word orchestrate. I don't believe that God orchestrates. I think that we orchestrate and he just kind of comes alongside of us and works with us as we work through life. But that's it. That's the belief. And so I believe that because I have that, and because God can take care of me even when I do stupid things, and because I believe that God can take care of me even when other people do things to hurt me, it's like I don't need to worry about relying on myself or relying on my relationships with other people. It doesn't matter anymore at that point. If I can trust me, or if I can trust, Joe Blow down the street, it doesn't matter, because I'm going to do the best that I know how to do at any given time. Other people, I'm sure, are trying to do the best that they know how to do at any given time. And unfortunately, sometimes your best just really sucks, and you hurt yourself, and you hurt other people, and other people hurt you. But it doesn't matter, because my belief is that I have a higher power that takes care of me anyway. So in the end, everything's going to work out. So I don't need to worry about having trust issues with people or myself. I just trust in God, and I live my life that way. It's quite peaceful, actually. Very hard to do. However, I am also aware that not everybody shares my faith, and that's completely okay. I don't force that on anybody. Whatever you choose to believe is completely fine. So because of that, typically the advice that I will offer to sixes that don't share my faith, or don't have any faith at all, I guess I should say, because some sixes, may just have a different God or gods, depending on the faith that you're in. And the same thing could resonate for you as well, just the belief in the higher power. But for instance, if you're an atheist or agnostic or something to that extent, what I typically advise those people, and what I think is a realistic way to kind of get yourself to this level 1 state of health, would be to just have a realistic perspective going into relationships. Understand that other people are, again, they're humans. They're gonna, look, people lie and they steal and they try to manipulate you and they try to control you, and they're going to reject you when you don't fit into this mold that they have in their mind for how you're supposed to be. Whether you like it or not, that's how it is. Sometimes accepting that is a very peaceful thing, so long as you can accept it without feeling that you have to prepare for it. And when it comes to trust in self, again, if you don't have a higher power, if you don't have a faith that you ascribe to, I always tell sixes in that situation that I don't recommend that you put your faith in yourself, because, again, look, you guys know what I'm talking about. Like, you've made stupid ass decisions that have created problems for you, right? I mean, be honest, okay? You don't have control over half the shit that you do. You know what I mean? Again, honesty. Let's just be honest. It's called being human. There's no shame. It is what it is. So again, have a realistic expectation of yourself there. Be willing to approach yourself non-judgmentally and with forgiveness. And, here's another thing. Very few things in life are going to kill you. I mean, really, very, very few things. So sometimes I think sixes get into these situations and we're panicking and we're freaking out and we're becoming maybe a little too obsessive about it or paranoid. And these things eat us alive. And that's what makes us really unhealthy. That's what makes us do drastic things and things that cause problems down the road. But, in the middle of those moments, sometimes it's good to sit down and take a couple of deep breaths and say, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't have any sense of inner direction, but it's okay, because worst case scenario, this situation, whatever it is, probably isn't going to kill me. It's probably not going to take my life. If I believe that it will, there are things that I could do to prevent that or stop it, right? So worst case scenario, I get really hurt, or I get myself in a situation that's unpleasant for a little while, and I learn from that, and I begin to work my way out of that situation, however long it takes. I think that sixes get overwhelmed sometimes with how they feel, especially the anxiety and the fear, and I want to encourage you that if you don't have a higher power, or even if you do, you need to know that, look, emotions are temporary things. They are chemicals that are floating around in your brain, causing you to feel and behave and think things that you normally wouldn't feel, things you normally wouldn't do or think. and all emotions pass. Emotions are not necessarily indicative of reality. I cannot express that enough. And so it helps sometimes, I think, to get yourself to this level 1 place when you're a 6, and you can really, really embrace that, you know, whether or not you believe in God or you have your own faith or higher power. That's how you do it. You'll know that you've achieved it when shit hits the fan and you may be disappointed or scared or angry or whatever it is. But at the same time, there's not this urgency to act. It's almost kind of like you're a little contemplative about it. It's almost like you're okay to wait and take in data. You know, there's a sense of inner peace about it. You'll know it when it happens to you because it will be different than anything that you've ever experienced before. So I hope that helped. If you have any questions or comments or anything like that, you guys know the routine. If you will, please put them below. I've gotten to the point where I am so overwhelmed with incoming data from all of the different social media and things, and I've got clients that I'm taking on, and it's getting really hard for me now to go and respond to every single YouTube comment that I have. If it's one that seems crucial or very imperative, I'll respond. Otherwise, for the most part, what I do is read them, and then I let you guys interact with each other. Pretty interesting strings of conversation attached to my videos. Which is fun. As long as it's not abusive, you know, I'm all for it. I love debate. I love sharing ideas and, you know, sharpening each other's thoughts and that sort of thing. So, cool community to have and be a part of. But anyways, thanks. I appreciate your time.